Hey guys, as Tim said, I'm Ben from BJF Lending. I'm the founder of BJF Lending. We're a private money lending company. And I wanted to put together something tonight to give value to you guys as investors. Can I see people who are active investors in flipping? Is anybody doing house flipping? Anybody multifamily investors, commercial investors? So those are the three segments of investors that I help. And I didn't want to make this just a sales presentation. I wanted to educate you guys on private money and maybe fill in any gaps that you might have on how private money works and how you can best use it to your advantage as an investor in residential, commercial, multifamily, whatever it might be. So a little background about myself. I have, you can go to the next slide, Tim. I've been in construction and real estate for about 23 years. I started off actually coming to these meetings, I think it was around 2003. I don't know if there's anybody here that I know Richard. I've known Richard for over 20 years. I've moved around the country a lot since then. I've lived in Austin, Texas. I moved there in 2009 to flip houses. Used to go to the Bay State Wealth Builders, Dave Lindahl meetings, and I remember Dave saying, Austin, Texas is the next big thing. And I was like, see you later, I'm going there. So I flipped houses in Austin. I started a property management company in Austin. I've owned and managed a couple of residential renovation contracting building companies over the years. So I have a lot of knowledge, extensive knowledge in the construction aspect, the real estate aspect of things. Always knew that I wanted to get into private money lending. I had a mentor in Austin who took me under his wing. The first month that I got there, I met him at a networking meeting, and he funded a lot of my flip deals over the years, and he was like the most knowledgeable guy in real estate that I ever knew. He never had a family. It was just real estate. And we used to go on walks around the city, and he would tell me about his private money lending deals. He would lend me private money for my flip deals. And then I also had a buddy come into my house flipping business who was a private money lender. He would lend money to our deals. So I had the experience starting in about 2010 from the borrower side of private money. Always knew that I wanted to get into it, and finally took the leap and started building out BJF Lending last year. So I'm pretty new as a private money lender and building it out. I'm in New Hampshire, opened my doors in Massachusetts last month to lend in Massachusetts, and so that's where I'm at. So we can go to the next slide, Tim. Like I said, I want to give you guys a little bit of information about what private money is. So there's a lot to it. I'll give my disclaimer as well. I am not an attorney. I have talked to a lot of attorneys, probably 7 or 8 that I've consulted with in the last 12 to 18 months. And on the security side, federal security side, which is SEC, state security side, blue sky laws. I'm actually in North Carolina as well, so I've done multi-state research. I've gotten different answers from every attorney on a lot of the information around private money, how to structure it, doing fractionalized loans, which means there's multiple people, multiple investors on one note. And so what I will tell you guys is when it comes to private money, make sure that you have a good securities attorney on your team. Make sure that you have a good legal team. Securities is a very specific aspect of real estate. Just like foreclosures, like even the difference between a closing attorney and a foreclosure attorney, right, is often different. So I've been advised and said, yeah, you can just do this and just start an LLC and throw a couple investors in there and you're good to go. And it's like, no, you're not good to go. So the other thing I'll say is feel free to reach out to me. Anybody that's interested in learning about private money, the ins and outs, if true private money, guys, for you guys, if you want to raise true private money, is going to be you guys starting to reach out to your network, friends and family, and raising capital for your own deals. That's like the best, least expensive way for you guys to raise capital. So I'm a private money lender, and that has its space too, right? Like when I was flipping houses, I needed to utilize a private money lender because I didn't have time to be going out and managing investment capital from friends and family. I had a little bit of it, but when you start doing it on a bigger scale, you're basically becoming a fund manager, which is its own whole thing, which is what I'm doing now. And I'm learning about the pitfalls and the ins and outs of that. So, I'm really relationship based. So I'm a pretty small time person in the private money lending space. I'm local. So if anybody wants to reach out, grab a card over there from us. We can have coffee. I'm happy to sit down and just provide value. I'm all about, if I can make a connection. I have a deal going on in Massachusetts right now. I'm looking at a commercial mixed-use deal. So one of the things that BJF lending does is cross-collateralized portfolio lending. So if anybody has equity built up in their portfolio, which a lot of people do these days, getting those low-interest loans 5-10 years ago, and don't want to totally refi out and lose that rate, I can utilize that equity that you guys have in your portfolios to cross-collateralize on deals and make it pretty sweet. Do up to 100% loan to cost, sometimes even more. And so I'm working on a deal down in Massachusetts where the borrower came to me, said, I've got this mixed use deal that I want to do. It's a vacant mixed use commercial building. I have this big portfolio and I want to cross collateralize it to do this. Well, a lot of his portfolio is commercial, and a lot of those commercial loans have acceleration clauses on it. So the short of it is that we couldn't use all of his property to cross collateralize it, and he needed to bring a JV partner in. He didn't have anybody in his network, so I reached out to my network and I said, hey, I actually have a couple people that I think might be good candidates to be a JV partner on your deal. So I'm bringing them together right now, and it's looking like that will end up going to funding, and it will be a win-win-win situation for everybody involved. So again, I'm a private money lender, but I'm also a networker, a connector, and happy to just dig in with the community here and help you guys out any way that I can. So Tim, how much time do I have? 10 more minutes? Okay, we can go back to that last slide. So we can get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of private money. I don't know how of interest this is to you guys. I do plan to start, I'm going to be doing some more sit-down kind of mastermind style, let's get together and learn about private money, and I'll pass my knowledge on what I can. Hopefully there will be other people there that can pass their knowledge on and just start to build out a community here in the Northeast that we can all help each other out in this realm to learn more, to bring funding together, maybe even do some deals together. But I'll dig in a little bit. Really, if we wanted to dig into the nitty gritty, we could be here for 3 days learning about this stuff. And again, I'm not an attorney, so talk to me if you're looking for a good securities attorney. And if you have good securities attorneys, please let me know.
You're essentially going second position on properties.
Yeah, so the question is, when I cross-collateralize and utilize that equity that's built up in a property to fund another deal, on a loan on another deal, I'm effectively going into second position. That's correct. Okay. Unless it's paid off property, I'm going into second lien position, which a lot of the times on commercial deals, it's tough because those commercial loans will usually have a built-in acceleration clause that gets triggered by a second. So a lot of times it works with residential or paid off real estate. And I'll do a question segment at the end. I'll try to leave a few minutes at the end too. And again, feel free to come talk to me after. Yeah, so dig into a little bit of the nitty gritty. The best securities attorney that I know that I've found on a national basis is Geraci out of California, Geraci. Kevin Kim specifically. I've consulted with a lot of attorneys and even commercial securities attorneys on like a state level, but from a national perspective, if you guys are looking to build out in the private money lending space, Geraci is the best I've found. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the nitty gritty. So how to structure private money. What does that look like? If you guys want to go out, raise your own private money, or you're just curious about how I structure private money, what are some of the terms and the vehicles that we use to structure it? So the first and most basic way to structure a private money loan is through whole note placement. That effectively just means you're taking one investor's capital and you're placing it on a note. That could be a first lien position note, could be a second lien position note. So a clean way to do it, as opposed to fractionalizing, which is when you're starting to mix funds together and fund a deal, which you're starting to get into securities territory, which you don't want to do until you're on the next level of you either have your fund or you're protected and operating under like a 506B or 506C exemption under SEC. And then there's a whole state level that you have to follow too. You can do that. You can take someone's funds, and even on a single deal, you can take that capital, place it into first lien position. If they didn't quite have enough, you have someone with $200,000 and you need $300,000. You have another person with $100,000. You can put that second person into second lien position and maybe give them a little bit of a sweeter deal. So that's whole note placement. That's single investors going onto a single note. And that can look like your own capital going onto someone else's note. That can look like, hypothecating when you're taking someone else's capital and placing it on a single note. That would be like matchmaking, what they call matchmaking in the private money world. So that's another form of whole note lending. And brokering would just be, if you're doing that, you're utilizing another lender, for instance. Like, if you came to me and said, hey, I've got this deal, it's not my deal, it's my friend's deal, but they were willing to give me a little commission if I brought them the money. You could broker a loan to me, or you could broker a loan to another lender or somebody else, just for, just shows up on the settlement statement as like a servicing fee or a broker's fee. And again, you need to be careful there depending on what state you're in, and don't do that without talking to an attorney. Don't take my advice for it. Fractional note participation. So when you start getting outside of whole note placement, you're starting to get into the territory, like I said before, of securities, which you need to be really careful about that. So whether that's doing it through like a participation agreement, which is just a contract that says we are multiple investors, or there are multiple investors participating, and you're spelling out terms for this deal. That's one way to structure it. Assignment is another way, where you're effectively putting a loan together as an entity, hopefully, or an individual, I suppose you could do, but I wouldn't recommend doing it that way. And you effectively use what's called an assignment contract, which is different than an assignment contract for a purchase and sale agreement. It's an assignment contract to assign a portion of that loan to another investor. I have a cohort in Arizona who actually uses that quite a bit. He does have an origination license, but again, state to state, you need to really be honed in. I don't know how that works in New Hampshire or Massachusetts. I think the safest way to do it is to just stick to whole note style placement. That's going to be keeping things as clean and as safe for investors and the capital behind it as possible. You start to get up to a bigger level. You put an actual fund together, which legal costs to put a fund together, you're looking at $40,000 to $60,000 in setup, and then you're now dealing with the SEC, and you're looking at another 40, 50, maybe even up to 100, depending on the complexity of legal fees annually. So usually setting up a fund is not going to make sense for anybody unless you have a portfolio of loans together of $7 to $10 million is usually the mark where that starts making sense. Prom note to entity, which would just be, hey, I'm going to assign a prom note out of my LLC and have somebody lend my LLC money, and then I'm going to lend that out, or I'm going to have multiple people do that. Again, dangerous territory. If you're doing that, some states, and there are people who do things like this and they get away with it for their whole life and there's never a problem. But when the deal goes wrong, or an investor wants their money back, and they start raising the flag and making phone calls to regulatory agencies, that's when you're dealing with hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, it's just not something, in my opinion, that you want to be messing around with. So you just really need to be careful. So that's another way that you can do it, but just have to be careful when anytime that you're borrowing money, especially multiple investors' money, just make sure that you're doing it in a clean way. So joint venture, that's kind of if you're doing it as a partnership agreement, a little bit cleaner, and that can be looked at as a way to structure private money that would be safer, but you're going in as a partner on the deal, which has more downside potential because you could literally lose all your money, which you could in any scenario. But as a joint venture deal, oftentimes it'll be like backstopped by a guarantee, which is a smaller rate, and then you participate in the upside. Depending on how it's structured, joint venture deals can be a little bit more risky for people. And so how much time do I have, Tim? 2 minutes, okay. Yeah, 15 minutes was not a lot. And so cross-collateralization, again, I talked to you a little bit about that, and that's something that I do as a lender that I think can really benefit. Investors have built up equity to utilize that on other deals and make it a pretty sweet way to put your equity to work. You can go to the next slide, Tim. So bottom line, guys, you know, when you're getting into lending, when you're getting into money, the real estate and the construction is one side of it, but really understanding the legality of what you're doing with money, how to structure it. If you start to wrap your head around these things, you can really, really fuel growth and start to see things in a new and creative way and open doors and profitability for your bottom line that otherwise you didn't know about. And you can go to the next slide, Tim. So I know I'm running out of time, so I'll start to wrap this up. But what does it look like if you're going out, you've got a deal? You know, the first line might be a bank. You guys all know, like, if you're dealing with a super dilapidated piece of real estate that needs a ton of construction, the bank's not going to touch it. You know, you're going to need to go to a hard money lender or a private money lender. Timeline, this thing needs to close in 2 weeks, or it's going to foreclosure, or something else is going on, or there's a sticky title situation. You're going to need hard money or private money. I think most of the people in this room understand that. Why would you go to me as a private money lender versus a hard money lender? You know, sometimes the national hard money lenders will have decent rates. I've heard of some of the bigger people who really have a deep track record of house flipping getting pretty good rates in like the low double digits and, you know, like 1 point or pretty good rates. So that might be a good starting point for you guys to go to look at funding for your deals. Where I start to fit in with private money, again, I'm relationship based. I position myself that I'm a little bit easier to work with. I really understand the construction side of things and kind of position myself to help people out. Like, I truly want all of my borrowers to win, and I won't be afraid to say, hey, like, I could probably make money on this deal, but I think it would be really tight for you, and I don't think it would necessarily be worth your time. You know, I know it is tight out there, but there's still people out there making money. I think a few years ago, people were hitting home runs, and it sounds like these days people are kind of hitting singles and doubles. Some people are hitting home runs too. And so I just want to help my borrowers get into win-win situations. And so I'm relationship based. I'm pretty flexible and can get creative with things. I can open up my network to you to make deals work whatever way I can. That's where I think that I come in with my value add, is that I'm looking to build out long-term relationships with you guys over the years. I want to do many deals. And even if it's like, hey, like, maybe this isn't a deal for you, maybe you should talk to this hard money lender, you might get a better rate. Like, I'm happy to make that connection. And, you know, maybe you'll come back to me or make a referral to me in the future if I help you out in some way. So I'm going to wrap up. I know I'm probably running out of time. We can get to the speed networking portion of it. If you guys want to stay connected, I am going to be starting to do some more in-person mastermind style things around private money to really provide value to you guys as investors, or if there's other lenders in the room. I'm always looking to build out relationships and see if we have any overlap and we can help each other out. You can come over and connect with me on Facebook. I usually post most of my things on Facebook, and you can follow me that way, and hope to connect with you guys in the future. I apologize. I may have ran out of time with questions. Take some questions. Does anybody have any questions for me that they want, Richard?
Would you entertain an equity position where you split the profit with the investor?
Yeah, it depends. So the question was, would I entertain an equity position with an investor on a deal? You know, I have a lot of experience in the residential, and where I'm at right now with the business, I'm on a smaller scale. So like, probably the biggest loan that I would do right now is probably around like $2 million for a single loan. And, you know, I will entertain anything, Richard. And, you know, yeah, I'll entertain anything. I don't want to say no. It's not the main structure of what I'm doing right now. I'm kind of trying not to get shiny object syndrome at this stage in my business, because I've been an active investor. It's like easy for me to, oh, look at this deal, we should go chase that. I've been kind of trying to stay focused on building out the lending business, but it would also be fun to go hang out with Richard and do some flip work and things like that. And so I'll entertain it, and I'm always happy to. One of the value adds that I have is I can do like a quick desktop analysis, 24, 48, 72 hours. And just before I get into full underwriting, take a quick look at the situation. And I know that a lot of the deals that come across my desk are time sensitive. So I'm always happy to entertain a deal and give it a quick yes or a quick no before it goes into full underwriting. And yeah, I'll kind of consider it. And
Just one other quick question on your single-family house renovation funding, that portion of it, does that come in stages with inspections?
yeah, so the question is on single-family flip house funding with the construction portion of it. Is there going to be draws associated with that? And the answer is it depends. It depends on the amount of the funding. I usually somewhere around the $30,000, $40,000 mark will start to want to do draws, but it's me. I don't have a third-party company where I'm going to say, oh, well, they need to come out and approve it. And so I'm all private money, guys. I'm not institutionally backed. I have capital. I have friends and family capital. And then my backstop is I'm backed by a private debt fund with my friend in Washington State. So I have all my own underwriting criteria, and I'm the one that approves draw releases. So it's a quick process. It's like, if we've built up a relationship and we have deals under our belt together, it's like, send me some pictures and let's do this, or I'll pop by the house and take a look and make sure everything's done, and not hold up the project for, I've heard a lot of horror stories about the bigger national level people holding up projects for weeks or sometimes months because the draw schedule goes bad and they're not, really doing what they're supposed to be doing, and boots on the ground. They're there to help the borrowers, which I'm not that.
It would also depend on your LTV, right? When you look at that preliminarily.
Yeah,
Depending on LTV in terms of the ARV and
Yep.
kind of where you're at.
Yeah, not just ARV, but a quick, and it really depends again, like how we structure it with cross collateral and things like that. But I try to stay like there's no cross collateral involved, and depending on what the capital at the closing table is.
Right, on single family, whatever.
Well, I try to stay at 70% of as-is value at any point in the process.
70% as is.
As is.
Yep.
Right. Pretty standard, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Are there any other questions?
What kind of rate, what are you seeing for rates, terms, and such?
Yeah, so what are my rates? I say my cookie cutter is 12% and a couple points. I can start off at if it's simple and there's nothing complex. And it can start to go up from there if it's, if I'm needing to really dig into construction and scope, and depending on how much work I'm putting into it with cross collateralization and time frame. Yep. And yeah, I try to structure it so that it's the best rate that I can possibly give you. If it's like quick turnaround, you're going to be out of it in 4 months, 5 months.
Every deal's different. So.
Every deal's different, but I try to make it work. Yep. Yep. Any more questions, guys? I appreciate you guys listening. I hope it was helpful. Try to, like I said, provide value for everybody, and I look forward to connecting with you guys in the future. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right.